I overheard my husband bragging that his 32-year-old ex was better than me. He thought I was still out of town. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 52 years old, and until the day I came home early from a business trip, I believed I knew the man I'd spent 23 years building a life with. I came home early from a business trip after my original flight was cancelled, and I managed to catch an earlier one. Ethan thought I wouldn't be home until after 8, so when I pulled into the driveway a little after 3 and saw his car, I smiled. For months he'd complained that my work kept us apart, and I thought surprising him with an early return might be exactly what we needed. I even stopped to buy his favourite dark roast coffee on the way home. Looking back, that paper cup sitting beside me feels almost pathetic. I was still trying to save a relationship that had already disappeared. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Ethan? No answer. I left my suitcase by the stairs and listened. A burst of laughter drifted down from upstairs. It wasn't the polite laugh I'd heard around family or co-workers. It was carefree, warm, and completely unfamiliar. I hadn't heard Ethan sound that happy in months. Smiling, I started toward the bedroom, expecting to surprise him. Instead, his next sentence stopped me halfway up the stairs. 32 has honestly been the best decision I've made in years. I froze. Another voice crackled through the phone, too faint to make out, before Ethan laughed again. She actually has energy. Real energy. Not someone who's exhausted by 9:30 and thinks sitting on the couch counts as romance. My fingers tightened around the banister. At first, my brain refused to make sense of what I was hearing. Then he said my name. No, Claire has no idea. Confusion disappeared the moment Ethan said my name. He wasn't talking about a client or a coworker. He was talking about Olivia, his 32-year-old ex-girlfriend. Over the years, her name had surfaced now. And then in harmless stories about hiking trips, concerts, and places they'd visited before we met. I'd always believed she was nothing more than part of his past. His friend said something I couldn't make out. Ethan lowered his voice, but every word still reached me. Trust me, Claire doesn't suspect anything. She's too busy with her business meetings and investment calls. As long as I tell her I'm meeting the guys, she never asks questions. He laughed again. That laugh hurt more than the affair itself. There wasn't an ounce of guilt in it, only complete confidence that I would never figure it out. Then he said the words that changed everything. 4 months. Honestly, I've been happier these last 4 months than I've been in years. His friend must have asked about Olivia, because Ethan chuckled again. She doesn't want anything serious, and neither do I. That's why it works. I'm seeing her Thursday at 6. She's making dinner, or at least that's the plan. A week earlier, Ethan had complained that I wasn't putting enough effort into our marriage. I'd apologized and spent an entire day wondering if work had made me neglect him. Standing on those stairs, I finally understood the truth. Sometimes the person betraying you convinces you that you're the reason the relationship is falling apart. When Ethan casually added, "Claire thinks I'm meeting Daniel," I knew I'd heard enough. I walked downstairs as quietly as I'd come in, picked up my suitcase and left the untouched coffee by the front door. My hands were shaking so badly I barely managed to pull out of the driveway. A few miles later, I checked into a hotel near the airport, room 814. For 3 hours, I sat on the edge of the bed without moving, replaying 23 years together in my head. Our first apartment, our wedding, the births of our children, holidays, renovations, ordinary Sunday mornings, and plans for the retirement trip to Italy we'd talked about only weeks earlier. 23 years had just been reduced to one sentence. Then Claire has no idea. Around 6:30, I called Rebecca Lawson, an attorney I'd known professionally for years. "Claire, is everything okay?" I need a divorce attorney. Silence filled the line before she finally asked, "What happened?" "Ethan's having an affair." Rebecca didn't ask for details. She simply gave me the name of Rachel Morgan, one of the toughest divorce attorneys in the city, especially when businesses and high-value assets were involved. "The other side usually hates seeing her name on the paperwork," she said. "Good." Within minutes, Rachel's assistant scheduled me for 9 the next morning. I also arranged an emergency meeting with my financial advisor for that afternoon. As evening settled in, I opened Ethan's contact and sent him a lie of my own. "Flight got delayed again. Looks like I'm stuck overnight. I'll be home tomorrow." Less than a minute later, he replied, "Okay, sweetheart, safe travels." Then another message appeared. "Love you." Only hours earlier, he'd been mocking me while planning another evening with Olivia. Now he was telling me he loved me. After deleting several replies, I finally typed 2 words. "Love you too." Not because I meant them, but because I wanted him completely comfortable. I wanted him believing his secret was still safe. By the time Ethan realized I knew the truth, I didn't want another argument. I wanted paperwork. The next morning, I walked into Rachel Morgan's office carrying nothing but my purse and 23 years of trust that had disappeared overnight. Rachel listened without interrupting as I told her everything, from the cancelled flight to the phone call, the affair, the lies, and the 4 months Ethan had carefully hidden from me. When I finished, she closed her notebook and met my eyes. "I'm sorry you're going through this," she said. "Now let's make sure you're protected." For the next hour, we reviewed our finances, our home, retirement accounts, rental properties, and most importantly, the consulting company I'd spent nearly 20 years building from scratch. Today, the company was worth roughly $2.3 million. Rachel walked me through the details with the calm precision of someone who'd handled this conversation hundreds of times before. When was the business established? About 6 years into our relationship. Did Ethan ever work there, own any shares, or help run it? No, he never worked for the company, owned shares, or had any role in its operations. She nodded. That helps me understand how the business was structured. We'll need to look at the records before I tell you what that means for the divorce. Next came the house. It was worth about $850,000, fully paid off, and unlike my company, it had been purchased together during our marriage. Rachel explained that dividing the house would be more complicated, but reminded me that the goal wasn't revenge. It's about protecting what the law says is yours. That was exactly what I needed to hear. Movies make revenge look satisfying. Real life runs on paperwork. After reviewing the rest of our finances, Rachel closed the file. "You have one weakness. I was wondering when we'd get to that. You heard him admit the affair, but if he changes his story later, independent evidence gives us something objective to work with." "You mean hiring someone?" "A licensed private investigator." The idea felt intrusive for only a second. Then I remembered Ethan laughing while he planned dinner with Olivia. "I know exactly where he'll be tomorrow." Rachel looked up. "How?" He told his friend everything. "Thursday, 6 o'clock, Olivia's cooking dinner." A faint smile crossed her face. "That makes this much easier." Within minutes, she called the investigator her firm worked with regularly. Tom Harris arrived before noon. A former detective with decades of surveillance experience, he studied the photos I showed him of Ethan and Olivia before asking only one question. "Where can I find them?" I gave him the apartment complex Olivia had moved into a few years earlier. Tom closed his notebook with a nod. "That's enough. We'll take it from here." Once he left, Rachel turned back to me. "There are still a few things you should take care of today." By 2 that afternoon, I was sitting across from my financial advisor, Michael. He already knew every account I owned, so when I explained what had happened, he quietly removed his glasses. "I wish this meeting were about retirement planning." "So do I." Together, we updated my financial records, separated future business income, reviewed our major assets, and changed every document that legally needed to be updated before the divorce began. Seeing Ethan's name on so many accounts no longer made me angry. It simply reminded me how much there was to untangle. Before I left, I updated my will, so everything I could legally redirect would go to our 2 adult children instead. Walking out with a folder full of paperwork felt surreal. Less than 24 hours earlier, my biggest problem had been a delayed flight. Now I was rebuilding my entire future. That evening, I got home before Ethan. The house looked exactly the same, with his shoes by the door, his coffee mug in the sink, and his laptop still open on the dining table. Nothing had changed except me. Around 6, the front door opened. "There she is." Ethan smiled, wrapped me in a hug, and kissed my forehead like he always did after one of my business trips. For a split second, habit almost made me hug him back. "I'm glad you're home," he said. "Barely." We ate and takeout in front of the television while he chatted about work, traffic, and golf, as if nothing had happened. I answered normally, wondering whether lying had become second nature to him, or if he'd always been this convincing. Thursday morning arrived quietly. Over breakfast, Ethan glanced at the clock before saying, "I'm grabbing dinner with Daniel tonight." I stirred my coffee and smiled. "Sounds nice." "You don't mind?" "Of course not." The relief on his face told me everything. He thought I believed him. Around 5:30, he headed upstairs to get ready. When he came back down wearing a navy button-down shirt he hadn't touched in months, I knew exactly who he was dressing for. He'd even sprayed on the expensive cologne I'd given him for our 20th anniversary. "You look nice," he smiled. "Daniel picked the restaurant. I'm sure he'll appreciate the effort. I'll probably be home around 11. I won't wait up." He kissed my cheek, said he loved me, and walked out the front door. I answered automatically, then waited 30 seconds before calling Tom. "He just left?" "We're already behind him." The next few hours passed in complete silence, except for the vibration of my phone. At 6:11, Tom confirmed Ethan had arrived at Riverside Apartments, A few minutes later, Olivia opened the door and let him inside. Around 8, another message came through confirming they were affectionate, and just before midnight, Tom sent the final update. Ethan had left after kissing Olivia goodbye. Minutes later, the full report landed in my inbox. 53 time-stamped photographs had turned suspicion into undeniable evidence. Rachel called early the next morning. "I've reviewed everything," she said. "We're ready to move forward." I thought hearing Ethan's confession had been the hardest part, but I was wrong. Seeing it documented in black and white erased the last excuse my heart had been trying to make for him. Rachel said the divorce petition could be ready by Monday, then asked if I had any special instructions. "I don't want him served at work or at home." "Where?" I looked at the final photograph on my screen. Ethan smiling at Olivia as if our marriage had never existed. "The next time he walks into her apartment, I'll make it happen." Monday morning, Rachel called again to confirm the paperwork was finished. Looking out at the maple tree Ethan and I had planted years earlier, I realized there was no fear left, only certainty. Once those papers reached him, 23 years of marriage would officially become a legal case. Around noon, Tom called with another update. "They're meeting again tomorrow." "So soon?" "They usually don't stop until someone stops them." The next day, Ethan behaved exactly as he always had. He kissed me goodbye before work, texted me a picture of his lunch, and asked if I wanted takeout later that evening. Watching him slip so effortlessly between devoted husband and practiced liar hurt more than discovering the affair itself. At 5:30, he picked up his keys. "I'm meeting Daniel." I smiled and wished him a good evening. The relief on his face told me he still believed every lie was working. A few minutes after he left, my phone lit up. "Target has arrived." Olivia opened the door and let him inside. Everything was in place. Rachel already knew the process server was waiting 2 buildings away. I tried making tea, but never touched it. Instead, I paced around the living room until my phone buzzed again. Process server approaching. A few tense minutes later, Tom called. "You may want to sit down." "I already am." He knocked. Olivia answered first, smiling like she thought it was a delivery. A few seconds later, Ethan walked over, still smiling. The server asked if he was Ethan Carter, handed him the envelope and said, "You've been served." I held my breath. What did he do? He looked completely confused at first. Then he opened the papers and everything changed. "I've seen plenty of people get served," Tom said. "I've never seen someone's face change that fast." "What happened next?" He looked at Olivia, then back at the paperwork, and asked if there'd been some mistake. There hadn't. Tom told me Olivia tried to read the documents, but Ethan immediately pulled them away. Once he saw my name on the divorce petition, he finally understood exactly what he was holding. "The first thing he asked," Tom said, was, "How did Claire know I was here?" That was all I needed to hear. Even then, he wasn't thinking about what he'd done to me. He was trying to figure out how he'd been caught. Tom continued. Olivia asked what was going on. Ethan couldn't answer, so she grabbed the first page herself. "What happened?" "She realized you and Ethan weren't separated." I sat in silence. So he lied to both of us. That's what it looks like. Until that moment, I'd pictured Olivia as someone helping destroy my marriage. Now it seemed Ethan had built his affair on lies from the very beginning. According to Tom, their argument spilled into the hallway. He heard Olivia ask one question clearly. "You told me your marriage was already over." Ethan answered too quietly for Tom to hear, but it didn't matter. Olivia stepped back, pointed toward the hallway, and told him to leave. He tried to explain, but she cut him off with 2 words. "Get out." There was no screaming or dramatic scene. The process server had already left, and Ethan simply stood outside the apartment for several minutes before walking back to his car alone. A few minutes later, Tom sent me 3 photographs. The first showed Ethan accepting the envelope. The second captured him staring at the divorce papers in disbelief. The third showed him standing alone in the hallway as Olivia quietly closed the apartment door between them. That single photograph told me everything I needed to know. Less than an hour later, Rachel called. "Tom told me what happened. Olivia threw him out." "I know." After a brief silence, she said, "He'll probably come home tonight pretending nothing happened." "I know." "You don't have to confront him." "I won't." "So what's your next move?" "I'm changing the locks tomorrow." That night, Ethan came home just before 10. He looked almost the same as when he'd left, except the confidence had faded from his face. For a second, I wondered if he was finally going to tell me the truth. Instead, he smiled. "Daniel talked my ear off all night." Another lie. Not an impulsive one, but a deliberate choice made after he'd already been served divorce papers. "I bet," I said. Hein loosened his tie and studied me. "You okay?" "I've been thinking about us." He forced a smile. That's what 23 years does to people. Maybe, or maybe betrayal only changes the person who discovers it. He kissed the top of my head, said he was exhausted, and went upstairs. I stayed on the couch listening to the familiar sounds of the house, realizing nothing around me had changed, yet somehow none of it felt like home anymore. By the next morning, Rachel had confirmed that I could secure the house while the temporary living arrangements were being worked out. Once she gave me the go-ahead, I called the locksmith. When the locksmith handed me the new keys, Rachel called to make sure everything was finished. It is. Good. If Ethan contacts you about the house, send him through his attorney. I will. Be prepared. Once he sees those new locks, he'll finally understand you're serious. She was right. By 7:23 that evening, Ethan had already called several times. After the 10th missed call, I blocked his number. A little after 9, headlights swept across the living room, followed by the sound of his key scraping uselessly against the new lock. Seconds later, pounding shook the front door. Claire, open the door! I went upstairs and looked down from the bedroom window. He stood on the porch looking exhausted, his shirt wrinkled and his face tight with panic. You changed the locks? Yes. You can't do that. I already did. His expression tightened. What is this? The beginning. Stop talking in riddles and let me inside. No, this is my house. It was. For the first time since I'd uncovered the affair, he looked genuinely afraid. I know you're angry. I'm past angry. Then let me explain. I don't need an explanation. I know where you've been going. I know what happened Thursday night. And I know about Olivia. The colour drained from his face. Instead of denying it, he asked, Who told you? I almost laughed. Even now, he cared more about how I'd found out than what he'd done. You're asking the wrong question. He stood there speechless before trying again. It's not what you think. Really? You came home after being served divorce papers and still lied to my face. His eyes widened. So you know about that too? I know you had dinner with Olivia, kissed her, told her I believed you were with Daniel, and promised me you loved me before you walked out the door. He lowered his head. I'm sorry. The apology sounded empty. I made a mistake. I shook my head. No, forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. Buying the wrong birthday gift is a mistake. Building another relationship for 4 months, lying every week, protecting it, and laughing about it isn't a mistake. I held his gaze. Those were choices. His shoulders sagged. I never wanted to hurt you. You did. I know. No, you knew exactly what you were doing. That's the difference. I rubbed his face and looked toward the front door. Can we please talk inside? No. One conversation. We're finished talking. You can't throw away 23 years. I didn't. You did. His voice cracked. I ended things with Olivia. No, you didn't. She threw you out after she discovered you were still married to me. Ethan went quiet. You didn't choose me, I continued. You lost her because she finally found out you'd been lying to her too. I looked away, unable to argue. And if Olivia hadn't found out? His eyes came back to mine, but he still said nothing. That was the answer I needed. Across the street, our elderly neighbour, Mrs. Henderson, pulled into her driveway with a few grocery bags. She glanced toward our house, noticed Ethan standing on the porch and me at the upstairs window, then quietly went inside. The brief encounter was enough to make embarrassment flash across Ethan's face. Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything, I replied. I'm simply refusing to hide your choices anymore. He stayed outside for another 10 minutes, cycling through apologies, excuses, and promises before finally asking in a tired voice, Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I answered honestly, and I don't have to solve that problem for you. He stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked back to his car. I watched his taillights disappear before closing the window. The house was quiet again, but for the first time in days, the silence felt peaceful instead of uncertain. The next morning, Rachel called. I expected Ethan to contact you. He did. 17 calls before I blocked his number, then he spent nearly half an hour outside the house. He's panicking, she said. He also hired an attorney. His lawyer called this morning asking whether you'd agree to one honest conversation, marriage counselling, or even a temporary separation before the divorce moves forward. My answer is no. To all of it. To all of it. I thought so. The following afternoon, Ethan's older brother Daniel called. I almost ignored it, but answered anyway. I heard what happened, he said carefully. I'm sure you heard Ethan's version. I know you changed the locks. And I filed for divorce. After a long pause, he asked, You're really not giving him another chance? I already gave him 23 years. He says it wasn't serious. Then why did it last 4 months? Daniel fell silent before trying again. He says he loves you. I believe he thinks he does, but love without respect isn't enough. After another pause, he asked the question that mattered most. Do you actually have proof? Photographs, time-stamped surveillance, and a licensed investigator. His tone changed immediately. So he lied to all of us. I think he lied to everyone. Daniel let out a slow breath. I love my brother, but if what you're telling me is true, he created this himself. I know. When the call ended, I sat quietly for several minutes. Daniel hadn't taken my side or Ethan's. He had simply accepted the truth, and somehow that felt like the first honest conversation anyone in Ethan's family had been willing to have. Saturday morning, our daughter Emma called. Dad's been calling me non-stop, she said with an exhausted sigh. He says you're overreacting and won't even listen. I listened for 23 years. She fell quiet before asking the question she'd really called to ask. Is he really having an affair? Yes. Are you sure? I wouldn't end a 23-year marriage over a suspicion. He told me Olivia is just a friend. I have 53 photographs that say otherwise. Emma inhaled sharply. I don't want to choose between you. You don't have to, I told her. Nothing that's happened changes the fact that he's your father. Her voice cracked. I still love him. I know, and that doesn't have to change. Sunday, Ryan called while I was grocery shopping. Dad wants us to convince you to meet him. I expected that. I asked him whether he ended things with Olivia before or after you found out. I stopped pushing my cart. What did he say? He wouldn't answer. I nodded to myself. That tells us everything. Ryan agreed. I'm not taking sides, but I won't lie for him either. That's all I could ask. Monday morning, Rachel called with another update. Ethan's attorney wants a meeting. They're also asking to delay the divorce for 90 days. So he has more time. Exactly. My answer is still no. I'll let them know. By Wednesday, Ethan tried a different approach. A handwritten letter arrived by certified mail, filled with apologies, excuses, and promises that he would spend the rest of his life making things right if I'd only agree to one conversation. I read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in the folder Rachel had told me to keep alongside every text, voicemail, and email. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about keeping a clear record of everything that had happened. Thursday afternoon, Rachel called with another update. Ethan's attorney isn't denying the affair anymore. That caught my attention. So what are they arguing now? They're claiming he felt emotionally neglected. I gave a tired laugh. After everything I'd heard Ethan say with my own ears, blaming the affair on my work schedule felt almost insulting. I worked because my business required it. I traveled when I had to, help support our family, and I always came home. I know, Rachel said, and you don't have to prove you were a perfect partner. His attorney can make whatever argument he wants, but none of it changes the fact that you've decided the marriage is over. It is. She then told me Ethan's deposition had been scheduled for 3 weeks later. For the first time, he would have to answer questions under oath while Rachel had the photographs, messages, and other evidence in front of her. Before we hung up, she asked how I was doing. I looked around the house at the family photographs in the hallway and the souvenirs we'd collected over 23 years. Even Ethan's favorite coffee mug was still beside mine in the cabinet. Nothing had disappeared simply because our marriage was ending, but those things no longer represented a future we were going to share. I'm sad, I admitted. I'm just not confused anymore. That's a better place to be than you think. After the call, I took Ethan's letter upstairs and placed it in the box where I'd stored our wedding album the week before. I didn't open the album or reread his apology. I closed the lid and put the box back in the closet. I wasn't trying to erase 23 years of my life, but I was finally ready to stop letting those memories decide what I did next. 3 weeks later, I met Rachel at her office before Ethan's deposition. She slid a thick binder across the conference table containing Tom's photographs, Ethan's messages and handwritten letter, phone records, and everything else we'd collected since the afternoon I came home early. Whatever he says in there, we have evidence, she told me. The deposition lasted nearly 6 hours. I wasn't in the room, but Rachel called as soon as it ended. He admitted the affair, she said. He also admitted lying about those Thursday dinners and telling Olivia your marriage was already over. That part still caught me off guard. Then Rachel told me something worse. Ethan admitted he hadn't planned to leave me at all. He had intended to keep both relationships going until I discovered the truth. He tried to defend himself by claiming he'd felt neglected, but Rachel confronted him with years of messages showing the opposite. Weekends I'd suggested we take together, an anniversary reservation, a counselling article I'd sent him, a vacation he'd cancelled, and texts where I'd repeatedly asked if something was wrong. Those messages had once made me wonder whether I hadn't tried hard enough. Now they proved exactly how hard I had tried. What did he say when you showed him? Nothing. He looked down and stopped arguing. A month later, we entered settlement negotiations. I had no interest in dragging our private life through a public trial simply to punish Ethan. I wanted the marriage finished and my life back. After a full day of mediation, we reached an agreement. I kept the consulting company I'd built, while the house, retirement accounts, and other marital assets were divided according to the settlement our attorneys negotiated. Ethan received what he was legally entitled to, and I accepted the same. 3 days later, a judge approved it. The hearing took less than 15 minutes. It was strange that 23 years of marriage could end so quietly, but by then the real ending had happened months earlier, on the staircase, when I'd heard Ethan laughing about me. Outside the courthouse, he was waiting near the steps. "Claire, can we talk for a minute?" I almost kept walking, but stopped. "I just want you to know I'm sorry," he said. "I believe you." For a second, hope crossed his face. But being sorry doesn't change what happened. He looked exhausted. "I'd give anything to go back." "You can't. Neither can I." He lowered his eyes. "I destroyed your trust. And our marriage. I never thought it would end like this." Neither did I. There was nothing left to argue about. His attorney approached and Ethan walked away with him. I watched for only a moment before turning toward my car. That was the last private conversation we ever had. A week later, Emma invited me to dinner. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You seem lighter." "I feel lighter." She admitted she'd finally stopped hoping Ethan and I would somehow repair things. "I just wanted both my parents," she said. "You still have both of us. We're just not married anymore." Over the next few months, Ethan gradually disappeared from my daily life. Our remaining contact went through the attorneys, which was exactly how I wanted it. A few months later, I sold the house. Too much of my old life lived in those rooms, so I bought a smaller condominium downtown, close enough to walk to my office. My business remained strong, and slowly my days stopped revolving around attorneys, evidence, and whatever Ethan might do next. I never posted about the affair or tried to damage his reputation. I didn't need to. His choices had already done enough damage. One evening, Rebecca asked whether I regretted ending the marriage so quickly. "No," I told her. "I regret how long I ignored what I was already feeling." Looking back, there had been signs I'd explained away. The Thursday dinners, cancelled plans, the distance between us, and the way Ethan made me question whether my work was responsible for everything changing at home. I had spent months wondering how I could become a better partner, while he was quietly building another relationship. I couldn't recover the years I'd spent with Ethan, and I didn't want to pretend they had all been meaningless. We had raised 2 children, built a home, and shared a life that had once been real. His affair couldn't erase those years, but it ended the future we'd expected to share. Ethan hadn't taken away my future. He had simply removed himself from it. Once I understood that, walking away stopped feeling like losing my marriage. It felt like getting my life back.